The best lawyers aren't found in the big law firms. They're found in the stories of those who left. Hello, listeners and viewers of the Sell Life for Lawyers podcast. I've got a very cool guest today, a new League Loot vendor, but also someone who our paths almost crossed nearly 10 years ago. He was on the Mark Boris podcast, and so was I when the Mark Boris podcast had just started. And I only realized this when I'm doing a deep dive on David Vitek last night. So, Dave, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, I like to start with going back in time a bit because I think when I first messaged you, big fan of what you had built at HiPages, which was a massive marketplace for tradies. So I wanted to start there for the listeners before we get into the exciting things you're doing at Finchley. Where did the HiPages sort of venture, which ended up being IPO, and I think, well, anyone in the trade industry certainly knows about it. Where did all that begin for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. It actually started in 2003, so around that time. So I was actually looking for a business to start. I was just really curious about, what I can do to create value. And I got very interested in the natural health industry, which was a very different kind of landscape back then. But the theory was that if everyone in the country got like a remedial massage once a week, there'd be less road rage. Like, that's how I thought about it. So, but it was about educating people about, how to connect with a naturopath or a shiatsu therapist or a remedial massage, or like just educating people about all that space. So we started that did really well. Like, it took off really quickly. But what we realized was the skill that we had built was connecting businesses with consumers in a specialized industry, and really kind of getting inside that. And I met Robbie Sharon-Zipso, who became my co-founder at HiPages, and we looked at that together and said, actually, if we really want to be able to scale this idea, we have to do more than one industry. And together we sort of looked around and thought, and we found the tradie industry and noticed that actually there were a lot similar problems, much bigger problems. The more we got into it, we actually realized there were a lot of problems to solve in the trading industry. It's such a huge space that we spent the next 16 years after that just innovating until, the IPO, which is after that when we left.
Yeah, amazing. And so IPO was the late 20s, like before 2020?
2020, yeah. So about 6
wow.
years, yeah.
Yeah. So, right, it coincided with the world getting turned on its head. I didn't realize that. Amazing. Yeah. And then you took a break. That's a long time building something. And obviously me and Courtney are building a startup at the moment. So we're aware it can somewhat consume you. You took some time off after that?
Yeah, I took some time off. I think most people in their careers, maybe do a few 4-year stints over a 16-year period. And in that time, you might take a couple of month break. So, that was a really good, solid 16 years of burning the candle at both ends. And I thought I deserved a bit more time in just a couple of months. So, so I took a break and just tried to figure out what to do next. I knew I had this skill set in that marketplace space. I'd been speaking to Christian Beck about the legal industry, and he was chatting to me about some of, the problems that industry was facing, and got quite curious about that. I was looking at kids' activities and the problems there, and that's where, because I have young children and younger at the time, and so I was interested in that space. But eventually we started the legal marketplace. Just got really interested in this idea of why the legal profession was so inaccessible to the average person in Australia.
And that's what I wanted to ask you about was, fundamentally, did HiPages become, I see it as almost a translator of trust, because the tradies sometimes can't speak the language of the client, and the client wants to know, can I actually trust this tradie? And effectively for me, because I encouraged so many of the tradies I worked with to use it, was having someone like you guys effectively shows both parties they can trust each other and just makes it seamless. Was that the original thinking behind it, or did it evolve to sort of be that place as you can trust us to make the intro, basically?
Yeah, so that was, so I call that, say that was the outcome of what was created. Where the problem started was before we kind of created that category, the way you found a tradesperson was you were chasing to try to find a trade. You went through the Yellow Pages or Google and you would try to call maybe sometimes 10 or 15 people to try to find that person that can come and do that thing to my gutter or that thing that I need done in my house. What HiPages did was we flipped that idea to, can you find me someone that's available and capable to do my job?
Yep.
Just give me the list of the people that's available and capable to do it. And that was like the most attractive problem to consumers. I go to HiPages, I fill out my request, and I've done my job. HiPages will do the rest. Someone's going to call me.
Yeah.
Right. As opposed to, I go online, I could spend an hour trying to find somebody. I don't get a hold of someone. I've got to do that again tomorrow when I've got another hour to do that job. So that's kind of how it started. But then over time, as the platform starts to build, you have more tradespeople in there. We have lots of reviews on the tradespeople. We now know who's, we now have some quality, some trust. We have a complaint system. So people that outside of our kind of codes, we remove them from the platform. We've now got a trusted network, and that's what was built over time.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, but it's remarkable. And so effectively, having done it, I remember a story Alex Hormozy tells of his neighbor who's a billionaire, and he went into rubbish collection, built it up, learnt everything, did everything wrong, and then realized 5 years later, he asked him, what are you going to do next? He said, I'm going to go back into rubbish collection because I'm going to do it. It took me 15 years last time. I'm going to do it shorter this time. Yeah. Was that sort of when you looked at the legal industry? Because very similar. People don't know necessarily. Hopefully they don't have to use a lawyer that often. And when they do, it's who do I trust? How do I get in a hold of the right person? Is it the similar problem you were looking to solve with Finchley?
There are a lot of similarities about it. And it does feel like sort of, when you travel, when you say travel when you're younger and you did say Europe or something, you come back again, 16 years later, it does feel like I'm visiting some of these places again. So, a lot of the problems are the same. The metrics, some of the fundamentals of it are the same. But there's a lot of nuances. So with tradies, for example, it was about getting 3 quotes. That was structurally how that industry works.
Yeah.
People always, they use that term 3 quotes. Whereas with lawyers, you don't think about that as 3 quotes. But I do want to speak to a couple of lawyers to get a sense of kind of what I need. So so that thinking is quite different.
Yeah.
So, and also the flow of how that works, where a tradesperson will come to your house, whereas you'll generally go and visit a lawyer, or in today's world, it's probably you'll have a Skype call, which is how that engagement's going to work. So there are some nuances that are different, that when we create the flows, it makes it different and interesting enough. So, we have some good challenges in there that, new problems to solve. But yeah, like you said, fundamentally, a lot of it is, there are a lot of similarities.
Yeah. And have you found it, because you said you took some time off, was it 2022 Finchley co-founded or 2023?
That would have been late 23, I want to say. I think 23, 24, yeah.
Yeah. But is it growing, like it's the name's getting out there? And I know, like for us, we've got a growing list of sole practitioners. And the reason we originally reached out to sort of get a partnership in place is because they were like, hey, they're giving us really great leads. It's a great service. Has it been a far more condensed timeline from how long it took HiPages to how quickly this has grown for you?
So I've got to quite think through this one before I want to go there. So, okay, I'll go through with you what I think. I'll go through the story and we'll see how this goes. So when we started Finchley, the first thing that we built was actually a feedback product. It was a review product. And so that was allowing law firms to build up their reputation through their practice management system to collect reviews. That was the first kind of reincarnation of how we introduced ourselves to the market before we even thought about the marketplace. So we'll build up that kind of review set first. So we built that product and we were introducing that to lawyers. We got really good traction with that. The second phase, and that came from the learning at HiPages around building that trust piece. We thought, let's try and build that trust piece up front because we know we're going to need that, and that's going to be really important. Mm-hmm. So that was a lesson from my previous experience that I did differently now because, we now know this. Then the second part to that was to start to build out the marketplace. So acquiring traffic, finding people that have legal needs and connecting them with lawyers. So yes, we had a lot of lessons around that we're able to acquire quickly. We're able to communicate that quickly to lawyers. A lot of the processes we used, were quite similar of how we introduce the product, and we can educate them about, how to onboard effectively a lawyer into our platform. So we're able to do that quite quickly. But then when the real acceleration came was in the partnership with Law Connect. So because Law Connect had a big consumer product, they have the Sydney to Hobart yacht race that Law Connect sponsors that. So they have quite a strong consumer brand that we were able to work with that brand to start thinking about how do we, find the demand of consumers that have a legal need. We can connect them with the lawyers on the Finchley platform.
Yeah, amazing. And that's what the big question, because to see things done differently, because I noticed on your LinkedIn, your profile says your leadership style is challenging assumptions and stuff. And from a personal perspective, I wanted to see, you've been doing this 2 and a bit decades. Does that mindset that you've got of, I'm going to challenge, I'm going to disrupt, I can see a better way to do this, has that ever left you and thought, I'm ready to put my feet up and maybe get on a sailboat and relax a little bit? Or does it just keep coming back?
I try to. I try the idea of just kicking back and just letting life kind of pass by. But no, I just love a good problem.
Yeah.
I love it. I just love a good problem. And I think what's interesting about this is that, a lot of it, there is a playbook that kind of does come out. But I think with technology today, especially with how AI is working, I see it as just a real enabler, that such an ability to change the way consumers interact with platforms. Yeah, it was very different to when we started. If you think about what websites looked like back in 2004, 2005, they're very different today with how consumers engage. I mean, I started pre-apps, so there are apps that kind of exist, but even outside of that, just how people are expecting that there's an element of artificial intelligence in the platform. So, that makes it interesting for me.
Yeah. And so for you, because you've obviously come to the legal industry, 2023 is when ChatGPT, when LLMs became mainstream, and now AI is every second, every post has an aspect of AI in it. On LinkedIn, it appears. Where do you see, from the lawyer side of things, where do you see the legal industry as a service heading the next few years?
So we see that lawyers over time will be able to specialize a lot more. So we think through Law Connect Finchly, eventually Law Connect, that once lawyers are able to scale up this idea of getting the right type of work that they want to get, more of the work that they do, that they're really good at, and a scalable version of that allows them to then specialize in that industry. So whereas you might have some lawyers that would do a few wills, maybe a couple of divorce matters, and maybe a couple of, a few different types of law, it allows them to say, actually, I'm going to specialize maybe in family now, in that topic, because they can get enough work in that area that will allow them to do that. And that in effect kind of will eventually allow them to make more money because they're specializing in that industry. But also the on-flow of that is that there is a cost benefit to the consumer. So, we see over time that it's going to be a win-win for the entire industry.
Yeah. Oh, and that's because I know a lot of lawyers, and particularly the big firms, which I openly discuss, I don't like how the traditional model's built. That's why I encourage lawyers to start their own firm. But if it lowers the cost of access, in Australia, it's about 70% of the population feels like legal services are too expensive. I mean, they're called the missing middle because in terms of legal aid, there's a percentage who qualify for it. There's a percentage who don't because they're too wealthy or they earn too much. But over 70% are literally in that middle where they just think it's too expensive to get a lawyer. So sometimes they just don't bother because they're afraid, or they get burnt and then they try and do it themselves. And so I go, that's a lot of marketplace where it might just be in their brain. They think it's going to be 5,000, but if it can be 2.5, they're more than happy to pay for it. And if the lawyer can do that, and I mean, that's, I guess, the startup in me, and the entrepreneur, not the lawyer in me, because I can see lawyers go, but yeah, do we have to change? It's still got to be profitable. I'm like, we're actually creating a new marketplace for the majority of Aussies who don't engage lawyers at the moment. You could engage them and you're going to, I mean, to me, most lawyers can get behind that because you take an oath to uphold justice and integrity in the justice system. Making it more accessible can only head in a good direction. So yeah, very exciting. And so I guess in partnering with us, that's what I'm excited about, because we're going to giving our members a great deal to send work. But is there any tips you've seen, or how the lawyers on your platform who are thriving, is there any particular things you've seen, trends or patterns that this might be why they're thriving? Is it that hyper specialization, or is there anything they should be thinking about?
So the hyper specialization is interesting. What we see is putting a customer lens on their business. So things like when a law firm gets a lead or someone who's contacting them about their service, having a speedy response is not always obvious to every firm. So sometimes some law firms will say to us, look, I do get leads, and often I call them within 24, 48 hours. And by then, depending on the nature of where that potential customer came from, they may have moved on elsewhere. What we kind of say is, look, the idea is to make contactors have a meaningful conversation as soon as you can. So an amazing scenario is that a customer fills out a lead and they get a call pretty much straight away saying, quick chat to book an appointment, lock that in, and then the client now knows I'm being looked after. And I think it's to your point about, on top of that missing middle, which I'm also quite fascinated about. I do think there's an accessibility problem from a cost point of view, but there's also an accessibility problem from I kind of don't know where to start. Where do I even go? Like, is it to call a lawyer and where to even find somebody? But it's also this idea of feeling like I just want someone to take me on that journey, just someone who's going to say, I got you. Right. And part of that process when the law firm thinks about that as an inquiry, it's someone who's saying, I need someone to say, I got you. So that quick phone call initially, that first phone call is just saying, I got you, right? Let's chat tomorrow or next week or whatever the time is, but I got you. And that's why we see that really works. So when we speak to law firms and they tell us, look, the ones that have a faster response rate to their clients end up converting more matters.
No, and this is why when I met with Dane, I knew we were singing from the same choir book, because obviously we're called The Sell Life, and I say you can be the best lawyer in the world until you learn how to sell yourself. No one's going to know about it. So, and that's the huge one for me, is it is putting themselves in that situation. And one thing I ask lawyers, so have you ever engaged a lawyer? Oh, no. And I'm like, or those who have, I see a massive increase in their service because they know the stress someone's under. And that psychology of, you just need someone, I say, getting the monkey off your back. Like, a problem shared is a problem halved. Once someone, it's usually the first time they've been able to just speak openly. And if you're the first lawyer they do that to, there's a trust that's formed simply because they've verbalized what is oftentimes a pretty traumatic or harrowing experience they're going through, and just verbalizing it out loud and realizing the world didn't come crashing down. They're like, I trust this person. And as I say to the lawyers, because whenever someone says to me they're price shopping, they're doing this, I remind them price is only ever an objection in the absence of value. So you haven't shown them why. Yes, it might seem 5,000 might seem like a lot. It might be 3 months' wages for them. But the stress they're going through, the sleepless nights, all the other things, that 5,000 is still a pittance that they may be more than willing to spend if you articulate the value in your service. And if you can't articulate that, I sort of tell them, I'm a bit of a hard ass. I just say, what are you providing to the marketplace? Because you're not building them a house. It's not a product or anything. There is a lot of sort of things around this that you really need to be adding value to them besides just the
100%.
advice, or I can read the legislation for you, because AI is going to do some of that for them at the moment.
Yeah. We see marketing as, the definition of marketing is educating your customer about what you do. And I think a lot of lawyers see marketing as maybe a word that they don't try to associate with. There's some negative connotations around marketing, and maybe some of the practices around marketing have led to that in certain aspects of the world and the way we see marketing. But fundamentally, it's about educating your customer about what it is that you do. Lawyers are officers of the court. That's how they see themselves. There's a professionalism around that. What we try to say is think of marketing as about educating your customers about what you do. Because if you don't do that, then they won't know how to find you. They won't know what to use you for. You need to let them know what you do. So let's just don't call it marketing. Just call it something else if you like, but you need to educate to them about what you do. And part of that, like you said, is explain to the customer about the work you do. You need to learn how to tell the story of what you do.
Yeah.
That's value.
Yeah, and I find, and that's why I like the specialisation, all that, because when I'm teaching lawyers selling and they hate it, because at the moment anyone says selling, they think of a used car salesman pushing a product they don't need. And I go, selling for anyone who's actually done it long term is problem solving. See a need, fill a need. And if the product, service, or whatever I'm offering you solves that problem, I will spend the time to show you why it does, because I've got conviction that, no, this is actually going to solve the problem you've articulated. So whatever the pain points, I say, like, you need to extract them. The customer needs to be able to vent to say, it seems very expensive. You need to be able to explain to them why it's more expensive doing it themselves, because the dire consequences of going it alone, then that to me is the danger. I've done it, admittedly. One day I'll share the full story. And I had a fool for a client and it cost us a small fortune. But so many Aussies end up doing that. And I go, but if we can find this middle ground, which is what I'm excited about this partnership to go, we've definitely got the same vision of this is where we want to head. So for you guys with this merger, and tell me what you can share and what you can't share, but where's the future for Law Connect and Finchly heading?
Yeah, so great question. So Law Connect's become a great source of identifying consumer demand. And we've already been using that and sending and working together as an integration with Finchley, where lawyers on the Finchley platform are able to get leads from the Law Connect platform. So, and over time, what we're going to start to see is Law Connect will be that main brand, especially because, well, the name sort of says what it does. And secondly, there is this boat that's kind of connected with the brand that has some really good exposure, each year around the city of Hobart. So yeah, that's where we're seeing that happening from a brand perspective around the Law Connect piece, and where we're looking at this kind of industry now together as this big problem, basically around the middle, the missing middle that you spoke about, which is how can we help Australians navigate the legal industry better, and a lot of that does flow through to law firms that can assist them with that. Or what other kind of information can we be helpful with to help this market? So, we're very excited about the road ahead. Yeah,
fantastic. Well, I think we might leave it there. We're running a little low on time. I don't want to hold you too long, but very excited to have Finchley in the League Loot vendors. We've got a great deal for the members, and I'm excited, and you can hold me to this. I'm hoping to see some data where Sell members who take the leads convert higher and better than anyone else in Australia, because that's where I see a great the partnership going is we'll teach them how to convert those leads.
I'm sure they will. Well, if they got you working with them, I'm sure that is likely to be the reality.
Fantastic. David, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, Lofty. Take care.